The countdown did not begin with flashing numbers or roaring engines, but with a quiet, almost invisible moment in a small house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where a 3-year-old girl sat cross-legged on the floor, watching a cartoon about animals pretending to travel through space. And when Mars appeared on the screen, red, distant, mysterious, she didn't laugh or clap like the others, but turned to her father with a seriousness far beyond her years and said, "Daddy, I want to be an astronaut, and I want to go to Mars." A sentence that sounded innocent at the time, almost cute, yet carried a weight that would follow her for decades, because unlike most childhood dreams that soften and disappear as life intervenes, this one hardened, sharpened, and grew more demanding with every passing year, as Alyssa Carson began to shape her entire existence around a planet no human had ever touched, memorizing Martian maps by the age of 6, while other children learned spelling words, valleys and craters of a world millions of kilometers away, and calmly explaining to her father that she needed to know where they would be when we get there, not if. A choice of words that revealed something unsettlingly certain, as if her future had already been decided somewhere beyond Earth's atmosphere. And by the time she was 7 and stepped into NASA Space Camp for the first time, what felt like a fun experiment for most children felt to Alyssa like recognition, like returning to a place she somehow already belonged, a feeling strong enough to pull her back year after year, until she became the only person in the world to attend all 3 NASA space camps across the United States, Canada, and Turkey, absorbing mission simulations, leadership roles, and the language of spaceflight as naturally as others learned playground games. And soon the child who once whispered her dream to her father was standing in front of crowds by age 11, addressing hundreds of kids, then adults, then scientists, and by 13 she was traveling across Europe, delivering TEDx talks about Mars, speaking with a confidence that made people pause and wonder whether they were witnessing ambition or inevitability, whether this girl was chasing a fantasy or simply moving along a path she had stepped on too long ago. And as the years passed, the tone of her journey shifted from curiosity to commitment, as she entered her mid-teens and was accepted into the Advanced Possum Academy, one of the most physically and mentally demanding astronaut training programs on Earth, becoming the youngest person ever to do so, and learning not how to dream about space, but how to survive it. Enduring hypoxia chambers that starved her brain of oxygen, water survival drills that simulated spacecraft failure, microgravity flights that stripped away orientation and comfort, all while understanding that these were not rehearsals for glory, but filters designed to remove those who could not withstand the realities of leaving Earth behind. And in the same year she earned her pilot's license, not as a badge of honor, but as another tool, another requirement quietly checked off on a list that only she seemed to be following. And somewhere along the way, the world noticed and began to name her, reducing years of discipline and study into a single headline: "The Girl Who Will Go to Mars," a label that followed her into interviews and articles and podcasts, often accompanied by a more chilling phrase whispered just beneath the excitement: "One-way mission." Because while Mars has always captured humanity's imagination, few people like to dwell on the truth that a human journey there is not an adventure, but a gamble. A 6-month voyage through deep space radiation capable of altering DNA, through isolation intense enough to fracture the mind, through physical deterioration as muscles weaken and bones lose density, all to arrive on a planet that offers no air to breathe, no warmth to protect exposed skin. Forgiveness for mistakes, a planet where dust storms can swallow entire regions and silence can stretch for eternity. And Alyssa Carson knows all of this, has always known it, yet continued forward, not because she underestimated the danger, but because she respected it, choosing education over fantasy as she pursued a degree in astrobiology and later a PhD in space and planetary sciences, shifting her focus from being merely an astronaut to becoming a scientist capable of answering the most uncomfortable questions about Mars. Questions that go beyond landing and planting flags, and instead probe the ethical and biological consequences of human arrival. Because as she studies microbes, organisms so small they cannot be seen, yet powerful enough to reshape entire ecosystems, she confronts a terrifying paradox at the heart of Mars exploration. Every human carries trillions of bacteria, and stepping onto Mars could contaminate it forever, potentially erasing evidence of native Martian life. Before we even recognize it, meaning that the first human footprint might also be the moment we lose the truth about whether we were ever alone in the universe. A responsibility that weighs heavily on her, as space agencies and private companies race against time. Billionaires promise cities on Mars, and dates like 2033 are spoken in hushed tones, as if destiny itself were approaching. Yet Alyssa remains measured, cautious, even skeptical of large-scale colonization, reminding audiences that Mars is not a backup Earth, and that science missions must come before settlement. That humans can accomplish in hours what rovers take months to do, but also bring irreversible risks simply by existing. And while the media continues to frame her as a future astronaut, she increasingly speaks as a scientist wrestling with uncertainty, contamination, and the slow, patient pace of discovery. Watching missions like Perseverance cache samples, Europa Clipper and JUICE probe icy moons, and Dragonfly prepare to explore Titan, understanding that real answers may take decades. And when asked about legacy, she does not speak of being first or historic moments, but of balance, of curiosity sustained over a lifetime, of avoiding burnout in a culture that glorifies obsession. And yet, despite this grounded realism, the trajectory remains unchanged. Because when the moment finally arrives, when engines ignite and Earth shrinks into a fragile blue dot suspended in darkness, the mission will not ask who dreamed the loudest, but who prepared the longest, who understands the cost of leaving everything behind without guarantees of return. And somewhere inside that spacecraft may sit a woman who memorized the surface of Mars before she understood multiplication, who trained her body and mind for isolation and uncertainty, not to escape Earth, but to answer a question humanity has been asking since it first looked up at the night sky. Can we survive beyond our cradle? Or will the red planet remind us that not every frontier is meant to be claimed? And if Alyssa Carson is among those chosen, history may remember her as the first human on Mars, but the deeper truth will be quieter and heavier. She was simply a child who never stopped preparing for a journey that might cost her everything, including the chance to ever come home.